My baby has a cold. My baby tumbles. My baby doesn't sleep. My baby has diarrhea. My baby has yellow eye discharge. My baby can read. My baby doesn't like me. My baby is constipated. My baby is moving a lot. My baby should be born in America. My baby should be a model. My baby can do the splits. Is this normal? My baby can't self-soothe. My baby doesn't cry, just grunts. My baby doesn't have stranger anxiety. My baby doesn't look at me. My baby tries to eat everything. Is my baby autistic? Is my baby cross-eyed? Is my baby too fat? Is my baby possessed? What I didn't expect when I decided to have a baby was the advice. I was told it takes a village to raise a child. One person, even two people, is not enough. People would see my bump and veer towards me to tell me urgent words of wisdom such as, do not sterilise bottles after your baby is 4 months old or they might get leukemia. Make sure you don't let the cat sleep in the same room as the baby in case they're smothered. Do not eat curry while breastfeeding because the garlic will upset the baby. I assume that Google was full of people like this, that put the fear of God up you for using a blog. My midwife even told me while I was getting geared up for birth that I should, above all else, avoid Google. After the baby arrived, I carried on being selective in my sources of support, seeking out face-to-face support from specialist services. Children's centres, libraries, stay and play, books, walk-in appointment, friends who were happy to also bring their baby to the pub. And then there was an international crisis and I couldn't leave my house. During lockdown, we lost all sources of face-to-face contact from new parents. The whole idea of it taking a village to raise a child went out the window. And I wonder, has the internet helped or hindered parents with young children in lockdown? This is an exploration of how new parents have used Google or not to cope with being the village for their child. This is also my own journey as a parent through my Google search bar. From happy to sad to clinically depressed to DIY layman of raising a kid with no breaks and little support in a one-bed flat in Croydon during a pandemic, who heavily relies on Google. List of things I have Googled in the last 3 months, part 1. Reusable all-in-one nappies, second-hand, London. Weaning burgers. NHS flu jab pregnancy. 15-month-old normal poo. eBay baby Einstein light table. Peppa Pig brainwashing. Peppa Pig feminism. Can I bring my baby to a COVID test? When does morning sickness end? Can 15-month-olds drink fizzy water? Bamboo potty. 3-day potty training 15 months old. Nappy rash. Best way to introduce baby to toddler. Bunk beds with crib. IKEA bunk bed second hand. Toddler tree of life print. Healthy banana bread recipe. Sleep regression. How many baked beans can a toddler eat in a day?
Hi, I'm Heather. I'm 32 years old and I have 1.5 children. I used to use Google to search for pictures of Cher, but then I got cancer, and the nurse told me never to Google cancer. So I cut Google out of my life for good. But then COVID happened and I had to use Google, and eventually, in a way, I teamed up with Google, and now me and this terrifying Google thing are actually a pretty good village for my child because, he's alive and happy. I appreciate that not everyone is as scared of knowledge as me.
The internet, in the sense that I can learn how to do so many things, and I will be asking the internet a lot of things.
When I went for my first smear test, I needed the nurse to show me every single piece of equipment and tell me exactly what she was going to do. And then once she did that, I wasn't scared of it anymore. So people that actually know me really well know that that's how I work, and I need all of the information, horrific and great, and then that I can process it, and that keeps me calm. So that helped. What didn't help is people just telling you how awful childbirth is and that it's the worst experience of your life and you're never going to have any pain like it. And it's like 200 bones being smashed at the same time. Like, that negative type of talk just didn't work.
List of things I Googled in the last 3 months of pregnancy, not in lockdown. Pelvic floor. Annabelle. Water's breaking. Annabelle. Head massage. Labour. In the 3 months between having a baby and it being here, I pretty much stuck to my no Google rule. Throughout pregnancy, I asked my midwife questions and opted not to pay £500 for NCT classes to tell me everything I needed to know about birth. A terrifying event that I didn't want to engage with.
Stupid Google.
Oh, talk to me about Google, please. What did you Google while you were pregnant?
God, everything. So like when I first got pregnant, because obviously I knew I was I wasn't pregnant so much as I had the embryo transferred. So from that moment I felt like I was pregnant, and the whole time I was just like, is that twinge this, is that twinge that? And then I kind of got a little bit of blood, some spotting, and so of course that's when I first started Googling what does it mean when you get blood during the first week of falling pregnant, and all of that kind of stuff. So, and my mum kept saying to me, don't Google, don't do it, because it always tells you the worst case scenario. And I was like, but for me, I'd rather know and deal with it, and then it's okay, because the worst thing for me is things coming up that are a surprise.
I just remember, I actually remember feeling horrendous after our little, when we would go and they would be like, right, this is all the things that could happen. But some man passed out. So I was like, again, you're not the worst in the room, so you're okay. You might be like shedding a couple of tears at the back, but you're all right.
I read this amazing book called Expecting Better, which broke down the biggest risk to get pregnant from women using economics and cause and effect theory. This is Emily Oster, the author.
I think the biggest surprise for me was I seemed to be unable to get the numbers and the data from my doctor. So there were very many times in which they would say, well, it's different for everybody, or, well, the number's pretty small, or, we don't really know, but to be safe, blah, blah. And, I think for me, like the way that I think about decisions is I think, okay, I need to get the data, I need some numbers, and then I will use that in conjunction with risks and benefits and some simple decision theory to make these choices. And getting the actual hard numbers was just very, very challenging, and wasn't something that was forthcoming from my doctor or from the standard pregnancy books that I started with.
Based on this, I drank 2 cups of coffee a day while I was pregnant. I drank a pint of cider when at the pub, for over 2 hours. I ate a lot of salami and pineapple. At 3 months pregnant, I did my last wrestling match, and 6 months pregnant, I ran my last cabaret night dressed as Cher. At 7 months pregnant, I produced a wrestling show, launched my first book, and appeared on BBC Women's Hour. Then when I got to 8 months pregnant and couldn't put on my shoes, I decided to start actually reading about birth. What I found is I got given a lot of books on birth that reassured me I wouldn't die. Calm birth, positive birth, orgasmic birth. I avoided birth stories like the plague. When someone started, well, when I gave birth, I would just shout, no thank you. Or in one case, when a woman didn't understand this and followed me to the toilet, I started talking about the mucus plug. The mucus plug is a jelly-like blob, a bit like the Thames fatberg, that sits at the neck of your cervix and falls out when your waters break. There was a woman at the back who sat there with her modest 4-month bump and a notepad and asked the following questions. What is the biggest risk of sudden infant death syndrome? What are the chances of stillbirth? What are the chances of a botched epidural? How do you avoid your entire vagina ripping, from your anus? That day, after I left, and hid in the toilets 3 times, I understood more people have different relationships with knowledge than me. It can do a lot of different things. It can make you less scared, more scared. It can give you unrealistic expectations. But more than anything, knowledge, be it from books or talks or Google, can't prepare you for birth or parenthood.
Other than it being an emergency C-section, it wasn't a bad labour. It was all quite quick and easy. It wasn't too. I think I was quite lucky. I think because my body decided not to try and give birth, so I didn't get to the point of contractions when they were really horrible. I just had the early ones. They were all right, bit of gas in air, and then they were like, take him out. I said, take him out. That's it, done.
She wasn't supposed to get measured until, so I think we got to 2 centimetres at 10 o'clock or something, or whatever we were supposed to be at. I remember we were either at 2 or 4 centimeters, and then the woman was like, right, you need to, no, it must have been 2 centimeters, and she was like, well, maybe you'll be at 4 in another 2 hours, or maybe 4 hours. And I was like, okay. And I was like, what do we have to get to? And she was like, 10 centimeters. And I was like, fuck, 10 centimeters. And I was working out 4 hours for every 2 centimeters. I was like, we're going to be here for hours.
We kind of had got to the hospital to have a blood test, not a blood test, blood pressure test. And I kind of just mentioned, oh, I think I might be leaking. And they were like, well, you couldn't be, because you would know, blah, blah, blah. But I think so. I've been having a little twinge every 20 minutes now. And they kind of were like, well, we'll have a look. And they had a look, this nurse, and then she just rushed and went and got the consultant, and the consultant was like, yes, you're 3-4 centimeters dilated, you're staying here. So, and then it was just like, but I don't have my snack bag.
I think it was just being let down by the hospital completely. And I mean, everything was fine in the end, so I didn't put in any complaints, but yeah, it was just completely let down because my sisters, they've had like 4 or 5 kids, and it was all natural. And so I thought, oh yeah, you know, same genes, it'll be fine. Yeah, and then suddenly, I was plunged into a situation, first time mum in labor, and it was just like 2.5 days of me being in labor, and they just didn't have any staff to put me on to the next stage of labor. And then it was just too painful, and she just wasn't coming out, and heart rate was dropping, so I had to end up having a C-section.
I think a lot of women think that, oh, if I share a positive story, you know, I might be frowned upon because, you know, that's not what women talk about. They talk about all the bad things, and oh, it's going to be so much pain, you know. But it's nice to share a positive story, because I had so many people come up to me after, be like, oh my God, was it really painful? Was it horrible? I was like, well, no, it was lovely. I was ready to go again. Like, it was beautiful.
The things I Googled the first 3 months of parenthood before lockdown. Register birth Lewisham. Baby sleep newborn. 8 hours of whale sound. Free activities babies Croydon. Norwood Library. How much caffeine breastfeeding? I hadn't had any expectations really about being a parent, except that I would be tired, but the tiredness was next level. I knew that using Google for any kind of scratch or rash or concern would be asking for trouble. No one tells you about the terrifying mortality complex you have when you first have a baby. I was constantly being emergency services for one person. They also don't tell you, or you are not encouraged to research, what can happen in the first few weeks of giving birth if things aren't perfect.
Probably even the moment that you know you're expecting a child, there's quite a big transformation occurring. But when that baby is thrust into the world, there's no like pause button. You know, I think maybe with everything else we do, like you do this, you do that, you've like done all these other challenging things in your life, you think there's like a kind of a pause and catch your breath and reflect and evaluate button. But I just think with parenting, there's no like pause, let's catch our breath kind of vibe, and you're just like on the fly always.
I'm gonna be so hates when I'm talking on the phone. I mean, I'm gonna be very honest. I think there was a lot of gender disappointment because, you know, I really wanted a boy so desperately, and I did find out the gender because I deliberately thought if I have a girl, I'd be disappointed. So I thought it'd be a surprise. And yeah, and there was, because I know my husband really wanted a boy as well. And yeah, so we did have that initial gender disappointment. I mean, we were super happy that she was, you know, healthy, she passed all her tests. So we're really grateful, but I think it did definitely take me at least 2 or 3 days to kind of like be like, oh, actually, I am really happy.
If I'd have known that she was going to cry for the first 3-4 months and then that was it, but that the babies did that, I'd kind of know, yeah, no, that's fine. It's like when after I gave birth, it was impossible to go to the toilet. You couldn't feel your pelvic floor. You couldn't feel your muscles to be able to push to go for a poo. And you were like, Jesus Christ, am I ever going to be able to feel my muscles down there ever again? And nobody talks about that either. And I think we have a duty of care to other women to tell them about stuff that's not good as well, so that they can prepare themselves, and also that things will be bad, but they will get better.
My no Google rule continued. Advice was handed to me from all directions, but I chose to quietly ignore it. Mainly that the baby was wearing either too many or too few clothes, and I shouldn't hold my baby too much.
My mum had a go at me for Googling things and listening to my midwife over her. But her gems included: don't wear your baby in a sling as they'll get ADHD. Put your baby down drowsy but awake. Don't allow your baby to suckle off to sleep, it creates bad habits. Leaving a nappy on for 12 hours is fine if you're busy.
I don't know, like my gran gets really like, oh, well, you haven't listened to anything I've said about this. And it's like, I must not matter because you haven't listened to this one bit of advice. But it's like, you brought your children up in the 1950s, and it's quite a different place now. And I'm sorry, I don't want to leave him outside in the garden. Just let him cry.
When my partner went back to work, I struggled. I was bored, lost, but there were a plethora of free services that I took my baby to get out the house. They weren't perfect, but they added something.
But I just remember walking into the children's centre and the women that are really well trained just greeting you. It's almost like they can see in your face that you need them to say, it's all right, you're doing a good job. And the two women that were at the children's centres that I went to, just like as soon as you got there, they made you feel comfortable, and they made you feel like everything you were doing and everything you said was valid.
So we jumped on the bus because I don't drive, and me and her went down there, and I like walked through, and then I signed my name on the thing, put my details, my numbers, and registered, and whatever you do there. And then they finally called me and said, oh, you're next. And I went through in the room, and literally as I walked through with her, and I had like the baby carrier on the front, and I went to like sit down and talk, like the health visitor was literally like looking over my shoulder, and I was like, hi. And then they were like, and then the first thing they said to me was, where's mum?
You learn to rely on these things. Children's centres, relatives, friends, for better or worse, they do become the village. 4 months after birth, COVID happened. I went to the children's centre the last day it was operating, and by coincidence swapped numbers with 3 other parents that went. Then it went quiet. Suddenly that village that was helping me make a child was gone. List of things I googled in the first 3 months of lockdown. Babies, COVID. 4-month-old activities. How do you make edible Play-Doh? How do you make baby trousers? High chair second hand. No teeth 5 months. Flea bites on babies. Meningitis glass test. Can babies eat grass? Foods for baby with no teeth. Rainy days activities 5 months. Help crawling. Crawling exercises. Bulk bubble wrap. Rainy day activities 6 months. Head wobbling baby autism. What age do babies start dancing? Sleep regression 7 months. Co-sleeping, how to get baby out of bed. Baby from bed to cot. Child benefit. Postnatal depression 8 months. Gendered toys. Women working postnatal depression. Mother sacrificial lambs of COVID. 8-month-old poo. Lockdown happened so quickly that all of the resources online for supporting new parents took literally months to be updated. Tips on the NHS website for concerns with your baby were directed to book to see your GP or visit a baby clinic or a pharmacy or call 111. 111 was backlogged. And on the phone, no one is there to knowingly pat you on the back or hold out your baby while you wash your hair or have a smear test. It's now your job to entertain the baby at all times, to remember all the nursery rhymes and do them as enthusiastically as that lady at the library. My Google search history went from image searches of Cher for my job as an artist, and it became alarmingly clear how much I use it to help me get through suddenly being a village. I asked some other parents about their relationship with Google at this time.
At one point, and something I feel so awful about and didn't tell anyone in the family, I was so exhausted and baby was asleep on the bed next to me and she decided to roll off the bed and I was Googling everything to see if it had happened to other mothers and what to do. If we told family, they would instantly jump to judgment.
So once, I do it a few times, but I always find that I come up with those really horrible American sites of like crazies and I tell Alice what I've discovered and she's like, what the hell were you looking at? She was like, just look at the NHS, just look at this, just look at this. And I'm like,
why did you do all these things? Is it just to entertain yourself? Would you get the ideas off the internet? Or because I see a lot of people are like, oh, I saw this on the internet and it was an awful idea.
Something. All these wonderful ideas are great for babies, right? They put all these, and there's this woman that has got like tough spots with beautiful little setups of like story activities to do with a baby. They don't give a shit. They don't want to do it. You're doing it for yourself to entertain yourself. It's not for the child. They just want you to sing, cuddle and coo and look at books and go outside and take them for a walk and look at some trees.
Type baby into your search engine. What are the first 5 things that come up? Baby chipped tooth, baby sleepwear guide, baby shark, baby leggings multi-pack, baby led weaning after 12 months snowsuit, rabbit onesie, bath toys, skis, music, baby Yoda, baby cinema, blue water, baby walker, baby first words, baby shark, baby swallowed foil.
Surely Google is just as good as it is bad if it can help you find reassurance that a village sometimes can't provide. It's always there. It's non-judgmental. It helps you weigh up the evidence from bonkers to reassuring to call the fucking ambulance. If it hadn't been for Google, I would probably not have realised I had postnatal depression. In July 2020, I felt miserable. I cried in the morning when feeding my baby porridge, and whenever I asked a sage old parental figure about it, they struggled. I got answers like, "Is this hard all the time? What did you expect?" Or, "The first 18 years is really rough. Expect to feel like this until they're at school." This is textbook, not what you should tell people if they could be depressed. I started using the internet to research the fact the entire country had been slung, seemingly, into a mental health crisis. Later, I read that in July 2020, suicide was a higher cause of death than COVID. Postnatal depression cases increased by 300%. I was one of them.
Lockdown has been hard on families, but for many new parents, the pandemic has brought added stress and depression. And there's been a big rise in the number asking for help with perinatal mental health problems. They occur during pregnancy or in the first year following the birth of a child and can affect mothers and fathers. Well, one charity, Pandas, which offers support to parents with depression, saw a 75% increase in calls to its helpline as lockdown began. And even now, they're still helping 25% more people than this time last year.
What Google doesn't show is that behind closed doors, a lot of people are not sharing their stories. They are just getting through it. In the same way, nothing can really prepare you for parenthood. Nothing can really prepare you for the situation you find yourself a parent within. It's not so much the knowledge not being there or being mixed up with speculation. You just can't Google the way that life continues. You can only find some reassurance that you aren't alone.
Back in sort of the summer when the swimming pools were open, and I used to go swimming every day, and I found that not only very therapeutic to my mental health in general, but especially when it came to processing what had happened, it was really important for me to go swimming every day. And even down there, I remember there's a woman that I never really spoke to her that much. We'd see each other because she'd swim regularly and stuff. And one day we got talking about probably the lockdown and whatever it was coming or whatever. And she asked me how I was doing anyway. And I explained that I was finding it really helpful to come because we'd experienced this miscarriage and it was really helping me with that. And you know, just talking to someone like that down the swimming pool about something that was so often harder to talk to about, like with your family or close people, it was like really important for me to be able to like externalize those words and externalize what had happened through speech to someone. And she actually responded and said, oh yeah, I'd experienced that a couple of times, and she was saying, I come swimming here as well for the same kind of thing. And it was like amazingly unifying that we've been swimming these lanes like together for months, you know.
She was 7 months old when my mum died, and having a 7-month-old and having your mum pass away, you haven't got time to grieve, and moments where you can cry are limited. Because people say to me, oh my God, you've dealt so well with your mum's grief. Not my mum's grief. You've dealt so well with your mum's death. But what worries me is at the moment, lockdown is suspending time. And it's sort of holding me in one space and one time, although things are going forward in terms of hours and minutes and days, people are stuck in suspension and they're not moving forward with other things.
There is a wonderful quote that I got constantly told to me before I was pregnant, before lockdown, which was, it takes a village to raise a child. What does that mean to you with everything that's happened in the last 12 months?
Where is my village? Although we don't have a village, we have a home, we have each other, we have a lot of love for each other, we have a lot of love to give, and that's all we needed to give our baby.
But I just realized even you know, one's parents, let's say, are still parenting and like getting things wrong and right. And I think also like working out the kind of the gulf between you are the sort of product of your own parents' parenting, and sometimes you can be heavily blinded by what you think your assumptions of what parenting is or should be or can, or because it's just like you're blinded by what you are the product of almost. And I think sometimes being able to realize like, oh, your parents are just two different sort of people as well, trying their best and getting things wrong, getting things right, and just doing it their way, and kind of crediting them for that, but also allowing yourself to like go, just because they did it that way, we can still like redefine how we're going to do it at this point in time.
I don't know. I've not. I suppose it's a bit like too many cooks can spoil a child, village person, stew. It's like, this is the thing. Lockdown has really. I've got a lot more insular. Like everything, the bubbles of. I think it's robbed me of moving forward outside of that. After your you've bubbled for a year where you're like, intense baby, and now they're not intense baby. I thought I might be. I think it's not done very much for helping me move out of that headspace of it's all about my child and there's nothing else in my world other than sitting on my laptop at work or playing with my child. And I think it's just intensified that isolation. But not in a necessarily a bad way, because I quite enjoyed playing with everybody, and I quite enjoyed the excuse of being like, well, I can't see anyone anyway, so I'll just stay in my little bubble of nothingness. I am getting over that now. That is, it only took a year. I'm ready to socialize.
For me, it takes a mother to raise a child, not a village, because I am the village. I'm the entire village, the entire country that has raised my child.
I grew up in a village. I was definitely not raised by it. We had a big garden and I was safe because there was not really anyone around or busy roads. And everyone knew each other. I suppose if you're a parent, it meant you had one eye on everyone else's child's well-being, which is easy considering my primary school had a grand total of 40 students. My village was so isolated. It was a 45-minute drive to the nearest train station. And if you got a takeaway, it had to be warmed up in the microwave when you got home. And you went to the same nursery, primary, secondary, high school as all the same kids. So if you snobbed someone aged 11, it would still be considered relevant at age 16. In the village, there wasn't more knowledge. There definitely wasn't more breadth of thinking or diversity or acceptance. There was just less choice on who to listen to. But I also remember the village used to tell you what you should be doing. They don't like change or outsiders. Word spread fast in the village. If your parents had a messy divorce centred around a scandalous affair, for example, people would feel free to call you at home on a Wednesday evening and just ask you about it, even if you're a teenager. The thing is about the village is not that many of us live in villages anymore. We work differently now. We are self-reliant in a different way. But we are also told we need a lot more things to be like others and to be happy. So maybe Google is the village. One of the best things that is recommended by midwives is the baby bubble. You do not need a house full of family members to come and meet your baby when they are 2 days old, bringing balloons and a lot of noise and attention and confusion and illnesses. What you should be practicing is figuring out how the hell you made a life and who gets to sleep and when. The baby bubble is hard to maintain because everyone wants to look at your baby, and then suddenly, when the shininess of the new baby goes, the bubble pops and the visitors cease. You then find yourself traipsing from place to place to find people to help you with your baby, or at least speak to you and your baby, or be in the same room. Lockdown meant this was impossible. It was lonely and hard, and new parents were not equipped or prepared or supported by the usual systems. But it has also meant that a new kind of self-validation has come for a lot of parents, using your instincts. Even if those instincts are based on looking at the top 12 searches in Google for things and making your own decisions. It's come from spending more time with our children than people have in literally generations.
I'm quite fortunate in my situation, so we are like reminders of how lucky you are. So we've got flats that overlook our garden. We're really lucky in terms of where our house and our garden, and we often would just be like, we're so lucky to, and just reminding ourselves of all the positive things that we are fortunate to have, like, you know, Zebedee is lovely as well as being intense. Like I don't think I could have survived a lockdown without having the distraction of a child. I think that's really helped in a lot of ways, because I watch Super Nanny and stuff like that. That's where I get my parenting tips from. I just watch shitty telly, and then I'm like, oh well, actually they're nowhere near as bad as the mental children you've got on there. Or like Wife Swap, then you're like, I could be a complete mental man in America beating my children because I've been in the military for too long and I never see them. So, you know, I could be a much worse parent than I am. So,
There obviously there are times when you were just like, oh my God, what can we do in these four walls again for another day? And I had that a lot. But I think on the whole, I actually felt really good. There was a big level of stress that just wasn't there anymore, and I didn't have to think about it in the way that I had, and that was actually just a huge relief. And actually just enjoying being a parent in a way that I never would have been able to do before was just really really insightful for me. And
I think lockdown made us into parents. Before we were entertainment, we would take him to a group or a soft play or a farm. Constant stimulation, and now we are there for the boring parts, and trips are more like treats. It's stopped us spoiling our children, and it's meant we've got to know them better, I think.
Lockdown was horrible, but now I have become my own village, and as a result, I no longer fear Google. What I googled this week: NHS e-midwife, stomachache 12 weeks pregnant, male postnatal depression, pregnancy hernia caused by fizzy water, whale posters, BMI changes while pregnant, IKEA bunk beds cheap, baby allergy rash egg, Leaf free childcare, mother pucker, clearance toy sale aeroplanes, how do I watch the Muppet Show, Croydon toy library, toddler dungarees, toddler duvet hedgehog, baby books play music, pregnancy exercise cardio, outside activities and woods for toddlers, antihistamines while pregnant.
Looking for things.
Pepper and her family are
This has been a podcast by Heather Bandenburg for Don't Google It. The sound and picture editing was provided by Rebecca Biscuit. Thank you to all of the parents who kindly talked to me for the purposes of this podcast. If you need any reassurance as a parent yourself, check out Mother Pucker on Instagram, Pregnant Then Screwed on Google, parentkind.org, or PAMDAS for postnatal depression advice. Support is out there, you just have to Google it.